What up? I'm the Frozen Fins fan, and from Fairbanks to North Pole, Alaska, I can still smell the stink. This time it's not coming from the team. No, I mean, we know the issues the team has. I'm over the season. I'm not going to continue to talk about what I think is wrong with the Dolphins. We know the things that we need to do, and I don't think it revolves around changing a bunch of players. Uh, but what I did want to talk about today was I don't know if you know who Ron Jaworski is. He was a professional football player. He was a quarterback for years in the NFL. 16, 17 years he was in the NFL. Mostly with the Eagles. Played a year with the Dolphins even actually. Ron Jaworski, since he retired, has been a member of the media. He's got his own business. He's doing his own thing. Successful man, and he's well liked. A lot of times he seems to have some takes on things that are a little off kilter. Uh, and keep in mind he's very closely related or very closely intertwined with the Eagles organization. Of course, that's where he spent most of his career. Fans love him there, and he's heavily involved with the team and with the media operations around the team and everything else. I don't know how much he does for ESPN anymore, but he's been a member of the media for a while, and while he's a professional football player, it doesn't mean that everything he says is 100% accurate, especially when he's speaking about other teams. Uh, the whole Vic Fangio situation, this is the last time I'm going to talk about Vic Fangio. Uh, the whole thing has just gotten out of hand, and now we've got Ron Jaworski giving his 2 cents on the whole situation, and then some of what he said was partially true. You want to look at what he said, just go Google it or YouTube it. You'll find it. It's everywhere. There's plenty of ridiculous takes all over the internet, especially TD Fens talk. I don't know if you guys ever watch any of his stuff, but man, that guy sometimes he is so senseless it drives me nuts. That's partially why I'm making this video, is because I want to let people know, maybe just take everything that guy says with a grain of salt. It's kind of like Barry Cunningham, another one of the Dolphins YouTubers that just sometimes his position and take on things seems to be nothing but drama, and it's ridiculous. If you want to know about that, just go look at their pages. I'm not going to tell you not to look at them. I guess that's not really right. So go right ahead, check it out. But make sure to comment and tell me what you think about it, because I'll be honest, it bugged the crap out of me. He complains about Dolphins media and making up a bunch of stuff about Vic Fangio and how it wasn't Fangio that caused the problem, it was the players, and saying that Dolphins players don't work hard and that's why Fangio left, is because they refused to put in work, and saying that those people who are complaining about Fangio are the ones that don't work. And let's go through the list, okay? Jalen Ramsey liked a bunch of tweets by Javon Holland and Cam Smith. Now, does anybody have any argument about Jalen Ramsey and his work ethic? Because if you do, you haven't been watching football. He's probably one of the hardest workers that I've ever seen. He came back from an injury that should have taken 2 or 3 months longer to recover from, strictly because of his hard work. Cam Smith, I can't really speak for. He was a rookie last year, and he didn't really get an opportunity to play too much, so I can't really say that his work ethic is there. Obviously, he had some issues performance-wise and understanding of the defense, so I can't really say for him. But Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey, give me a break. Those are two of the hardest working players on that team. And if you ask anybody around the organization, they'll tell you the exact same thing, especially on defense. Nobody works harder than Javon. Javon Holland was an example for everybody else on how to work. So when you have TD Fens talking out of his ass about how those guys that are complaining are the ones that don't work, you got to be joking me. Instantly, anything you say about it is it's garbage. It doesn't even make sense anymore because you said that. These guys work very hard. Yeah, there are some players on the team that have the party mentality. I mean, they're 20-something-year-old kids. Of course they're going to have that, you know, and they've got to work through it and learn how to work and not party when they shouldn't be. That's like Cam Smith. I think that was one of the main issues, you know, when you talk to, or when you read about a bunch of the players and the things that they say in their own, you know, posts and on the internet and things like that, they say the same thing. So I could see Cam Smith being one of those guys, and that's probably why he didn't play. But Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey, get out of here, man. It doesn't even make sense what you're saying right now. I'd imagine it was probably somewhere in the middle. You know, you got a guy that's my way or the highway, Vic Fangio. You're going to do it this way, or you're not going to do it at all. And while that may have been something that worked back in the day, it doesn't work anymore. Let's look at those coaches that do that don't relate to their players, that don't have a relationship with them. Let's see. Vic Fangio, Bill Belichick. Those guys, they're not going to be coaching. They're not going to be a head coach, because as a head coach, you have to have the personability to be able to talk to players and relate to them and motivate them however they need to be motivated. You don't motivate every player the same way by telling them do it this way or get out. It just doesn't work that way anymore. It's not how it is at any professional level. College even, it doesn't work that way anymore. You have to change your approach depending on what players you're trying to approach. So to say that it was all the players' fault, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and I know most of you probably side with me on that, and it is maybe a little bit in the middle, you know. Both of them, it just didn't work. It didn't work out. And why do we have to insult players to get that point across and blame it on anybody but Vic Fangio? Give me a freaking break. First of all, it's Ron Jaworski who said this stuff. Ron Jaworski is heavily associated with the Eagles. So you're taking the advice of a media member for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is where Vic Fangio wanted to go last year, but he didn't. He signed with Miami, and then like a day and a half later, the Eagles were like, "Oh, can you come over now?" And he was like, "Well, I already kind of made this deal with Miami, so let me hit this for a hot minute." Okay, so you're going to take the advice of somebody who always wanted to be in Philadelphia and a media member for Philadelphia. You're going to take their advice on the Miami Dolphins over people who actually work for the Miami Dolphins or people who actually cover the Miami Dolphins. Wow. Dude, this guy's nuts. And I think the whole take in the first place is just absolute stupidity. I wish nothing but good things for Vic Fangio, for real. Like, I thought he did a pretty good job. I wasn't the one like everybody, a lot of other people that was, "Oh, we got Vic Fangio, yay!" That wasn't me. I was just like, you know, that's good. He'll probably give us a top 10 defense, you know, in the next year or so. And he did. We had, for all intents and purposes, you know, a top 10 defense. It was great. It did good. But could it have been better? Yeah, definitely could have been better. At the same time, I hope he does well in Philadelphia. I hope he's happy. You know, he gets to be with his family. His mother's very old, you know, and that was part of the motivation for him wanting to be there in the first place. He wants to be there. That's his home. That's where he's from. That's where he's been. That's where his family is. Like, come on. Why does it have to be anything else other than that? The Dolphins organization and Vic Fangio both said it was a mutual thing. We parted ways. Let's not make it anything other than that. If you're seriously digging that hard to get a story that you're insulting players and taking the side of the Philadelphia Eagles over the team that's supposed to be your team, and if this is one of those situations where the Dolphins were obviously wrong or the players were obviously wrong, then I'd be the first to be like, "Yo, these guys are lame." But it wasn't like that. Some of the hardest workers on the Miami Dolphins, the hardest working players, the ones that are always last to leave practice, those guys are the ones that had issues. And even if they had issues, Javon Holland didn't insult Vic Fangio. He didn't like rattle off huge posts about how much Vic Fangio sucks. He didn't do any of that. It was like maybe an hour after it happened and he was upset. So he took a video of him kicking a rock. Kick rocks then. We'll see you later. He didn't do anything else. Jalen Ramsey didn't run his mouth about Vic Fangio. No. And another thing, the second game against the Jets last season, Jalen Ramsey made a decision on his own. The cornerbacks made a decision on their own before the game that they were going to shadow certain players. Jalen Ramsey hadn't been covering Vic Fangio, or I'm sorry, Jalen Ramsey hadn't been covering a certain wide receiver for an entire game all year. He hadn't been doing that. He was doing what Vic Fangio said to do, which is you're going to play this side of the field. And if they take a player and put him on the other side away from you, keep your side locked down. And watch the videos of the games. Watch the highlights. He was always on the same side. In this Jets game, he didn't do that. Jalen Ramsey shadowed Garrett Wilson. He made that call. The players did. Javon Holland even talked about it in one of his podcasts. So this isn't something that I'm making up. They chose to do that because Vic Fangio wouldn't allow it to happen. What happened in that game? 30-0. We won 30-0. It's one of those examples of a great defensive coordinator and a good defense, but they just didn't quite click together. Okay? It doesn't mean Vic Fangio sucks. It doesn't mean Javon Holland and all these guys are terrible players and they don't work and they can't take criticism. They can take criticism. Believe me, they play for the Dolphins. We have one of the most fickle fan bases on the entire planet. And these are the reasons why it's sometimes really embarrassing to be a Dolphins fan. Not because of the team. No. Not because of the team. Not because of the owner. Not because of the GM. It's because of the fans. Some of you guys need to just chill out. And if you don't know what you're talking about, don't open your mouth and start spewing BS. It makes the players look bad. It makes everybody look bad, especially if it's completely false. These players didn't fight to get him kicked off the team. They didn't do any of that. They were hard-working players. Of course, there's going to be a few that like to party and do dumb things. But let's look at that. Cam Smith, he was one of the guys that liked to party and play. It's his first year in the NFL. I'm not making excuses for him, but you had to kind of see this coming. It's Miami. This is where, all kinds of things happen. It's got an incredible nightlife. People are going to do dumb things. That's why it's so hard to play there. Who else? Oh, here's the best example. Eli Apple. That kid played like absolute butt all year. It showed. But here's my question. If he was one of those party animals, and these are the players that had the issues, why was he playing every game? There was other players that could have been in that spot. Oh, they were party animals too. But, come on, man. Football teams are always going to have these small little issues. Things are going to happen. Most of this stuff stays under wraps. And in this day and age, now, on YouTube and everywhere else, and the world of mass media, not just public, like cable TV show media, but mass media, YouTube, all these personal podcasts. It's way more coverage than we've ever had these last few years. And it's just getting more and more. So in that, when you have that much exposure, you're going to see a lot more things that you don't usually see. But that doesn't mean these things haven't always happened. This has been a common thing for years. On every team, not just the Dolphins. All these teams, they all have these kind of things happen. And it's just because of the coverage now and the rich coverage, like there's so much of it. We're overexposed. Don't read too much into it. Don't believe these guys like TD Finstock and Barry Cunningham just running their mouths, talking bad about everybody on the team when they don't know anything. And I'm sorry, I still watch their videos. I like to follow the YouTubers for Miami and the podcast from all the different players that do it. I follow it all. I watch it all. And it's not always like that, no, but I'm seeing more and more of these YouTubers and podcasters taking these wildly inaccurate takes because they think it's going to give them more clicks, more views. Fine, whatever. But you don't know football. If that's the true position that you're taking and you truly believe, Ron Jaworski, someone who's obviously, biased, Of course he's not going to say anything bad about Vic Fangio. He's been best friends with Fangio for 40 years. Jaworski's not going to say anything bad about him. Of course, in Jaworski's eyes, he's going to turn around and say, yeah, it was all Miami's fault. So the question is, are you going to be smart enough to be like, yeah, that's probably not all the way true? Or are you going to be one of the goats or one of the sheep that's just like, it's all Miami's fault. Oh, that makes way more sense. It doesn't make more sense. Just sit back and take a breath and think about it. Whatever. He's not our defensive coordinator anymore. He's gone. He's moved on. I wish him luck. This is the last thing I'm going to say about Vic Fangio. And then I'm done. And we're going to move on. Who are we going to get for our next defensive coordinator? I don't know. I really don't. I think Frazier would be a great fit. I know a lot of people don't like him. He had some bad years. Obviously not really head coach material, I don't think. But I think he's a great defensive coordinator. I think Campanelli would be a good defensive coordinator. He's a no-name, no defensive coordinator experience, especially on the professional level. But I think he's got what it takes, and he's a little bit more motivational. The one thing that didn't excite me about Vic Fangio was that he was a skybox DC, and a lot of you know what that means. Some of you don't. If you don't, a skybox DC is the defensive coordinator that sits up in the box at the top of the stadium with a headset on. That's not where you need to be as a defensive coordinator. I really don't think that's where you need to be as an offensive coordinator, but I can see kind of a little more reason for an OC to be up there, especially if you have a good group of coaches, position coaches below you. But as far as a DC, you need to be on the sideline. And that was one thing that kind of made me not as excited about Vic Fangio, was knowing that he's going to be up in the skybox, and he was. And I feel like you could be a little more motivational and maybe bring out a little more of the dog in some players if you're on the sideline barking at them. So, yeah, he's a good DC. He's not a good head coach because he doesn't have. Fangio is not a good head coach because he does not have the personal skills. He doesn't. He can't relate to players. There's too much of a disconnect. And how do you think those players on defense felt going to practice and going to games and watching Frank Smith and Coach Mike McDaniel working with the offense, and saw them and how they were, and how McDaniel listened to them and talked to them and motivated them? How do you think those defensive players felt when they saw that, and then looked and saw Vic Fangio up in the skybox and couldn't even approach Vic Fangio? They couldn't. They could not approach Vic Fangio. Neither could the coaches. Position coaches couldn't even do it. They could not approach Vic Fangio with ideas, questions, or critiques. Now, all this complaining about the Dolphins players can't be critiqued and can't take criticism. Seems to me that was the other way around. I am not talking smack about Vic Fangio. I'm saying that he's a different kind of defensive coordinator. And while that may work with some teams, I don't think it was a good fit for our team. So, maybe I'm in the minority, maybe I'm in the majority. But I feel like I'm glad that he moved on. I'm glad that Vic Fangio is where he wants to be now. For him, I'm glad for him. I'm glad for us. This could be a good thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, and it certainly doesn't have to be one of those things where everybody complains on the internet for hours and hours. So let's move on. As soon as we have a defensive coordinator lined up and signed on, I'll make a video on that. I'm just getting going with the whole YouTube thing. So bear with me. But I'll do that. I got another video coming up talking about the season schedule. It came out, not times, but dates. And opponents are out. And it's an interesting schedule. There's a few things that are kind of cool about it, and a few things that I'm looking at like, oh my goodness. We got Lambeau at the end of the year, and a couple other games. But all of our home games against our division opponents, the Jets and the Bills and the Patriots, they're all in a row, and it's all in the beginning of the year at the hot time. So we'll have a definite advantage at home against those against them during those games, and those are division games, so that'll be huge. We'll talk more about that I think next week I'll do that. We got all kinds of stuff about to happen, free agency, draft, all the stuff that's about to be going down. So many other things we can be talking about, so that's what we're going to do. Vic Fangio, happy trails, brother. I hope you do have a good time, and I hope you do well in Philadelphia. I'm glad you're home. And Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey, it ain't fooling me, buddy. I know you guys. I know how you guys are on. I've seen it. I know you guys are going to do well. I know you're going to continue to work hard. I know you don't care hearing that from me, if you guys ever do see this, but I just hope nothing but the best from everybody. Cam Smith, you got something to prove, my man. You're the one that had some small issues during the year, in your rookie year. You're the one that made the post saying you're unlocked. Well, it's time for you to prove it. It's time for you to grow up a little bit and do your thing. We know you're capable of it. I know you got the talent. Everybody in the organization does too. So, I want to see it. I want to see a successful defense. I want to see a successful offense. I want to see a team that's together. And we got a chance. We don't need to get rid of a bunch of players. We don't need to sign a bunch of players. There's some things that we need and some players we're going to have to get rid of to make some of the free agency signings. But I think we got the space for it, and I think we got the time. Definitely, Stephen Ross has a deep enough pocketbook to restructure some of these contracts and very easily get us under the cap with some room to wiggle. So, let's see. Wait, tell me what you guys think. Make sure you give me a like if you could. If you liked it. If you don't like it, don't like it. I mean, thumbs down if you think it's a thumbs down. Comment. Tell me what's up. Tell me if you disagree or if you agree. I want to hear it. Thanks, guys. Fins up.